Put these foolish ambitions to rest.
Out of all the demigods introduced in Elden Ring, none is more tragic than Morgott the Grace-Given. While he's certainly hostile towards the tarnished protagonist, it would be a stretch to call him evil. In fact, there is a great deal of depth to Morgott's character, so much so that I would say he's one of FromSoftware's most complex, intriguing characters, and a personal favourite of mine. As a child of Queen Marika and Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, Morgott was born of the Golden lineage, yet his royal birth was tainted by his twisted and misshapen body. The right half of his face is covered in horns, and he has a large curved tail, leaving him looking withered and malformed. These distinct features mark him as an omen, cursed beings, reviled and shunned by society. He was born hated by just about everyone, including the Erdtree, which governs all in the lands between. Despite being a child of divinity, Morgott and his twin brother Mohg were cast aside, driven into the depths of the sewers beneath the royal capital of Lindell. There they were shackled, bound to the earth, so that they may never be seen for what they are. What makes this so tragic, however, is that Morgott was never cursed to begin with, he was blessed. Before the Greater Will sent a golden star bearing a beast to lay claim to the lands between, life in the world derived from the primordial crucible. From what I gather, this was the source of all organic matter, a manifestation of primal energies where all life once blended together. It is theorized that the crucible is the location where the golden star landed and grew into the Erdtree we know today. Whether the crucible had originally taken the shape of a great tree or had taken some other form is up to debate. What's clear from the in-game lore is that the Elden Beast changed the nature of the vital energies that existed there, twisting them to the Greater Will's desire, turning the tree bright gold and draining it of its sap. The Greater Will is not fond of the crucible. It did not take too kindly to the way in which society revered this ancient power. It therefore sought to diminish the old world order by demonizing anything related to the crucible, which includes the omens. Talismans of the crucible, which can be found scattered throughout the lands between, share tales about mortals blessed with growths on their bodies. These item descriptions most likely refer to the omen race. The crucible feather talisman, for example, describes it as being fashioned from feathers that embody the aspects of various creatures, said to have grown on the human body long ago, a vestige of the crucible of primordial life. Born partially of devolution, it was considered a signifier of the divine in ancient times, but is now increasingly disdained as an impurity as civilization has advanced. The Crucible Knot Talisman and the Crucible Scale Talisman both share similar accounts, namely that these unique features had grown on the flesh of mortal beings who were worshipped as holy icons. Many skills used by the Crucible Knights you fight bear a striking resemblance to the unique features of the omens. If we compare the tail incantation wielded by some of the knights, it looks the same as Morgott's tail, and then there's the knight's ability to manifest wings, which is comparable to Mohg being able to sprout wings out of his back. This all strengthens the idea that the curse is actually a blessing in disguise, but was regarded with disdain by the Greater Will because it's a vestige of the past and a potential threat to the Golden Order. At some point after the shattering of the Elden Ring, the shackles which held Morgott captive in the sewers weakened. Eventually he was able to break free, only to discover his mother, Queen Marika, and her consort Radagon had disappeared, leaving the world in a state of chaos as the rest of his siblings vied for control of the great runes that had once formed the Elden Ring. Rather than getting involved in his siblings' warring, Morgott instead chose to focus on defending the Erdtree and keeping the realm together. He took control of Lindell, but could not reign openly, for his curse was unsightly to most everyone. To get around his deformity, which has plagued him since birth, he became the Veiled Monarch, ruling from the shadows of the Erdtree. His face is never revealed to his subjects, who have no idea just who they're really serving. While he is very strict, his stewardship and governance over the lands between was said to have been noble and just. Morgott shows none of the flaws of his brothers and sisters. He doesn't share their selfish ambition, greed or arrogance. In fact, he hoped his siblings would come to see the error of their unruly ways. and there is even evidence to suggest that he tried his best to protect them. After learning about the circumstances which led to his brother Godwin's death in the Night of Black Knives, Morgott ordered the creation of the Century's torches, so a second tragedy such as this would never occur. The Century's torch is a unique item with flames which are bestowed with a special incantation to allow the bearer to see cloaked assassins, invisible to the naked eye. Its description says that it was furnished on behalf of the grace-given lord, hinting at Morgott's desire to care for the rest of his family despite their aspirations for power. Although Morgott was spurned and neglected for being an omen all his life, he never once strayed from his duties as steward. He remained loyal to the Golden Order. It's ironic that most of the children of Queen Marika, who were born well-bodied and sharp of mind, without any physical imperfections, became bloodthirsty tyrants, with some of them undergoing monstrous transformations, whereas Morgott stayed true to the greater will, even though it hated him. Morgott was not afraid of getting his hands dirty when he needed to. In order to go on the offensive, while simultaneously hiding his true identity, he fashioned an alter ego for himself, known as Morgott the Fell. By possessing commoners from a distance, Morgott is able to project his spirit in the shape of Morgott. In this form, he can freely lead the Knight's cavalry, his elite agents, to seek out and slay scores of heroes who dare to threaten the Erdtree and the capital city. He successfully defended Lindell against multiple sieges, including the armies of Godric and Radahn, who are inferred to have both attacked the city at some point or another. If we closely examine the footage shown in the story trailer, we can see what appears to be Godric's soldiers and slave trolls mounting a fierce assault on the capital. It is theorized that Godric, along with his blood relative Godofroy, had tried to besiege Lindell's walls together, but as revealed by Dragon Knight Kristoff's ashes, their attack had ultimately ended in their defeat, for Godofroy was captured and locked away in the Golden Lineage Everjail by the Dragon Knight himself. Likewise, Godric the Grafter was hounded from the royal capital. In fact, it is implied that Morgott absolutely humiliated Godric, forcing the cowardly fool to retreat all the way back to Limgrave by hiding himself amongst the womenfolk, which he was able to achieve thanks to the magical properties of the Mimic's Veil he had stolen. The opening cutscene further suggests Morgott gained the upper hand in combat against the young General Radahn during the second defense of Lindell, despite the latter being known as the mightiest of the demigods. Overall, Morgott appears to have the most known major triumphs amongst his family in the Shattering War, with numerous decisive victories against demigods, knights, champions and the like. Contrary to most of the other demigods, who secluded themselves in their respective regions, Morgott is a proactive antagonist, who actively searches for and hunts down threats, such as our tarnished protagonist, who is seeking to claim the Elden Throne.
Foul tarnished. In search of the Elden Ring. Emboldened by the flame of ambition.
It seems Morgott's goal here is twofold. By ambushing the Tarnished under the guise of Morgott at the gates of Stormvale Castle, he is both preventing us from claiming Godric's Great Rune, as well as stopping Godric from growing more powerful by grafting the arms of another dead Tarnished to his body. We may also interpret Morgott's actions as again looking to defend a relative, who in this case was widely known as the weakest among the surviving demigods. During our first encounter with Morgott, he unleashes an array of moves with his staff. He is shown to be quite adaptable and is quick on his feet. If the Tarnished manages to get behind him for a back attack, Morgott swiftly counters with a sweeping spin of his tail. As the battle goes on, Morgott conjures more golden weapons, such as his hammer, and can also cast a glowing sword for a long-range stab. When he is bested, his dialogue indicates that he's not finished with us yet.
I shall remember thee, tarnished, smouldering with thy meager flame. Cower in fear of the night. The hands of the fell omen shall brook thee no quarter.
Indeed, he shows up again on our travels outside the city with the same strength as before, but this time as a mini-boss to factor in the player's anticipated high level at this later stage of the game. What's great about having a recurring nemesis is that it shows how far we've come since that first clash with Morgott. I think I can speak for most of us when I say that Morgott was a fairly difficult obstacle to overcome in that initial confrontation. The way he fights, his reactive combos, and carefully timed attacks really teaches players to pay attention, dodge carefully, wait for an opening to strike, and not get greedy. If you are impatient, you are punished accordingly. And when you meet Morgott again, you should be knowledgeable and strong enough this time around to give him a good thrashing. Of course, we later discover his projected form is a lot weaker than his real body. When the Tarnished finally confronts Morgott in person beneath the Erdtree, we see him at the height of his power.
Graceless, tarnished. What is thy business with these thrones? Ah, Godric the Golden. The twin prodigies, Mikola and Melania. General Radahn. Praetor Rykard. Luna Princess Rani. Willful traitors, all. Thy kind are all of a piece. Pillagers, emboldened by the flame of ambition. Have it writ upon thy meager grave. Felled by King Morgott, last of all kings.
Up until this point, Morgott has kept his anger in check. He's retained his composure and remained articulate, even though he regards the Tarnished with utter contempt. But here, he's not holding back anymore. He's furious, and is ready to crush the staff containing his sword just to finish us off. An interesting fact about Morgott's sword is that it's made from some of his own accursed blood, which he had sealed away to form this warped blade. He hates this sword, which is why he hides it, but he's prepared to use it if it means finally beating the Tarnished. What I enjoy about this fight is how cinematic and climatic it feels. Morgott is pulling out all the stops. He's a living, breathing armory who comes at the player with a massive arsenal of throwing knives, great hammers, long swords and spears. His attacks are relentless. He's no longer ominously walking towards you, he's charging at you, hoping to cut you down as soon as he can. You can feel his desperation, which is perfectly captured by the background music. He suspects that our Tarnished is someone that rivals his own power, and the thought that he might lose everything he's fought so hard to protect terrifies him. When you do push him to his limits, he writhes in pain, and his corrupted blood erupts out of him, drenching the entirety of the throne room. He does not take too kindly to this, as he perceives the spilling of his so-called curse onto the floor as a direct affront to the Golden Order.
The thrones, stained by my curse, such shame I cannot bear. Thy part in this shall not be forgiven.
You know, it's rather sad hearing the disgust in his voice as he delivers this line. His dialogue here is a poignant example of the self-loathing he feels due to his existence as an omen. He's convinced that his blood is an insult to the sacred ground he stands upon, to the point where seeing it flood the throne room traumatizes him. If only he knew his omen origins weren't a curse to begin with, maybe then he wouldn't have been so resentful and could have aided the Tarnished in finding a better way to redeem the world, rather than continuing to defend a parasitic order that despises him. Morgott knew full well that the Erdtree denied entry to all who tried to pass through its thorns. As he struggled to speak his final words, he lamented on the idea that his actions were all for nothing.
Tarnished, thou art but a fool. The Erdtree wards off all who deign approach. We are all forsaken. None may claim the title of Elden Lord. Thy deeds shall be met with failure, just as I.
When considering both his backstory and motivations, Morgott is akin to the fatalist archetype. He was doing his utmost best to hold the kingdom together, whilst refusing to accept defying the Erdtree as an acceptable course of action, even if it meant damning the whole world. While it can be said that his devotion to the Golden Order is respectable, that doesn't change the fact that his unwavering loyalty is part of the reason why the world could not move forward from the dire state it was in. It's almost as if he'd spent so long trying to prove his worth to the Erdtree that he couldn't bring himself to consider the possibility of defying it in any way. For Morgott, the act of burying the tree in order to gain access to its interior was a line he simply couldn't cross. Still, the tragedy of Morgott's story doesn't end there. It turns out that he was indeed loved by at least one member of his family, his father. When we return to the Erdtree after setting it ablaze, we find Godfrey holding the corpse of his dead son, as one would cradle that of a newborn child. For a lifetime, Morgott thought no one cared for him, when it's clear his father did. In the end, Morgott was an omen who started with nothing, confined to a dungeon to live out the rest of his miserable days in despair and loneliness. Yet once he was freed, he found something to believe in. Though the greater will wanted nothing to do with him, Morgott fully devoted himself to it anyway, considering its principles to be just. He rose from the depths of a dirty sewer to become a great king. Yet he never let his position and power consume him. He acted not for any personal desire, but because he felt a profound sense of duty. Even his decision to remain in tattered rags and a cloak, rather than donning something more regal, goes to show his modesty as a lord. Morgott may not have been the handsome prince his brother Godwyn was, but his selfless actions proved that he was a worthy successor to Lord Godfrey and Queen Marika, right to his last dying breath.